And then if you could let me know that it's working. Share, copy, tab, paste.
Oh, it went live.
It did go live. All right. So that's interesting how the live stream. Can you find my YouTube channel and then see that it says I'm now streaming? So if you just go to my regular thing. Oh, yep, it says live now. Okay. So the YouTube link should be working. Interesting. I see the security reason for it. You don't want people accidentally live streaming. So now the key is generated by YouTube to live stream, and then I have to put the key into the software, start the software, verify that YouTube is watching the software, and then I can go live from YouTube. All right. So we left off 2 days ago. The last thing we had done was I think we added particles on the enemy. And we were going to get the basic game over logic. So we ended with particles. So do I have a HUD layer on here? I do not have a HUD layer on here. So I think that's where we're going to start off. And we'll get into some enhancements. I heard a request for using WASD, which has been bothering me for moving around with the arrow keys. We'll get that in here. We'll do some instance variables. Whoever's got the volume up, turn it down. Sam. Because we don't want to pick that up in the actual video stream.
You've got your name in classics.
So, I'm going to go on to construct, add a new layer. Some of you may have followed along with this yesterday. Just jump in when we get to the spot where we stopped. We said HUD. So HUD heads up display. I'm going to, on this new HUD layer, make a new sprite called HUD background. I'm going to name it afterwards in a second. And I'm going to size it to be about 600 pixels wide and leave it at 250 pixels big. I think I gave it the off black color, which is the 50-50-50. So there's my default sprite image here. It's just this background that's going to pop up when I want the game over screen to be there. So I'm going to move it around the center of the screen. I know the exact middle is at 854 pixels divided by 2, so that's 427. And I'm okay with the 167 for the height. I'm not okay with sprite as a name. I'm going to call it HUD background. And then I'm going to take my score message. I'm going to right-click on it and choose Clone Object Type. And I'm going to clone it onto the HUD layer. I'm going to change it to text message, and instead of score 0, it's going to say game over. And if the same thing happens today as yesterday, it just says game. If this happens to you, the reason why it's happening is because your text area is not big enough to fit the whole text at the size you placed it. So I like that. I'm going to say same thing. I want this to be positioned at 427. I don't care about the height. I can move it up a couple pixels and then leave room for the buttons underneath. So everything's there the way we want it. The text says game over. You can put a little frowny face in or exclamation points or whatever the message is as long as it's school appropriate. I'm going to create another new sprite. This one is going to be just a rectangle, and I'll size it 250 by 80, and that'll be, I think I said a random color, but I'm going to change my thing. I'm going to go 250, 250, 250 to get that off-white color. And I may change this later to see what I want it to be, but we may have text shining through. I'm going to align it over here. Sprite is going to get renamed to BTN Home, short for button home. Once I have that created, I'm going to right-click and clone object type. And now it's BTN Home 2. I'm going to rename it to BTN again. I'm using camel case there to keep things going. And 233 for the Y value, 232. Oh, I'm off by 1 pixel, so I'll change this one to 233. And then the X pixels are just kind of eyeball to when it looks even and stuff. You could count out the number of pixels there. I'm not going to check it, so as long as it looks more okay than not, I'm okay with that. So we match that. Now, this is the part that we went to Wednesday, and then Jane, you caught me because I forgot when I was making a new family. I forgot to put the HUD background of the family. So I'm going to hit Add Family on the Projects tab. I just scroll down to the Families folder. And in this family, I'm going to add Button Again, Button Home, and HUD Background. The reason why we're grouping these together is because we want to be able to turn them all off at once. Okay? So that's there, and instead of Family 1, we're going to call it HUD, Heads Up Display. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go to the event sheet, and we're going to find our on start of layout, which should be towards the top, and we're going to add some actions to the on start of layout. We're going to add an action for the HUD that's going to set opacity. Just start typing in set OP, and then it's there. And we're going to set it to 0 on the start of layout. We don't want to see the HUD. So that will work a little bit, but remember, there's a gimmick in Construct 2 where game over is always going to be there because I haven't told it to be invisible, and I can't add it to the family for HUD. So I have to repeat this action for text message and say set opacity to 0 at the start of the game. So now the message won't be there, and we're ready to start doing some game over logic. And I think yesterday I introduced the idea of instanced variables, and we started thinking about how we could make some of the enemies rotate horizontally or vertically, and then we could make some of the enemies rotate, well, not rotate, but spawn in different locations. So rather than them all spawning in the odd locations or all spawning in the even locations, we could give them a hit point count system and, you know, take away from their hit points when they're destroyed. Same thing for the player. So to start this, I'm going to add a new global variable called isAlive, and I'm going to give it an initial value of 1, being true. When the game starts, we are alive. So here is where I have my isAlive variable, and I'm going to go to my player first. I'm going to right-click on my player, and I'm going to go to Instance Variable. On Instance Variable, I'm going to add a new variable. I'm just going to go HP for short, and I'm going to give the player 5 hits. So we can take 5 hits in this game before the player actually does anything. So the action we need to add now is if the enemy is overlapping another object. That's the event. So the event there is on the enemy is overlapping another object, and that other object's going to be the player. So when we choose the player, the action we want to add now is player, and what you'll notice is now that we've added an instance variable, there's an instance variable section that wasn't here before. Just like when you add behaviors and other features, these actions show up now. So now I can subtract from the value of HP by 1. So what's that going to do for us? Well, right now, nothing. But let's go to the event sheet, and we'll make a quick marker. I'm going to go to layers and make the HUD layer not visible because I don't want it to be in the way. Back on the player layer, I'm going to clone the object type for the score, and instead of being score, this is going to be text health. And eventually you could get this to not be a text message. You could get it to be a sprite where like the hearts deplete like in Legend of Zelda or something like that. Somebody already made like a stamina bar, and you gain stamina back. Every like 10 enemies you get like half a heart back. But I'm just going to go simple here for tracking purposes and say health, :space 0. So inside here, here's my health 0, and then maybe that needs to be smaller. So maybe I'll cut the size in half or something to like 24 pixels. And then that way I can kind of shrink it down and leave it up in the top corner for health. So now health is there, but we have to give instructions for it to constantly be updated by the system. So what's always running? What's always running in this event sheet so far? Which action is always running? Or which event?
Every tick.
Every tick. So just like we update the text score on every tick, we're going to update the text health on every tick, and we're going to set the text to, inside the quotes I'm going to have health with a colon and a space. Outside the quotes I'm going to add an ampersand, which means add to the end of this, and we'll say, now I can't just type in HP because HP isn't the variable. I have to direct the game to go and find the player dot HP, because now it knows, go find the variable that's only associated with the player that we called HP. And there's the icon right there, that little green marker, to show you that it's an instance variable.
Oh.
Okay? So it's inside every tick. We're setting the health to health, colon, space, so that's the visual display. And then the number that will be stacked onto the end of that is going to be player.hp. So if I run my layout again, player health is 5, and I'm going to intentionally go back up into this one, and then, ooh, something's happening here. What's happening? My health is at negative 92, negative 84, negative 128. What did we forget? The player is, the enemy is constantly touching, overlapping the player, and every tick is happening very rapidly there. So we can see on here, we need to add another interaction to say, all right, in addition to subtracting 1 from the HP, the enemy needs to be destroyed so that it doesn't rapidly detract from the score. So we'll make that one change. We'll start our preview. We'll bring our preview in.
Wait, what was the text you said for the health?
I'll bring that up in a second. I just want to see that I only get 1 health taken away. 1 health taken away. 2, 3, 1, 0. All right. So it can still go negative, which we have to fix, but it's now tracking 1 hit per enemy. All right, so the text to show the score was in the every tick. It was grab the text object, text health, and we set it to health, colon, space, so that's what's in the quotation mark. And then the ampersand just means add this on the end of the string that's already there. And it was player.hp. So player dot whatever you named the instance variable, whether you did health or hearts or whatever, that's what we're going to have. So now, one thing I want to do here is I want to teach about dual conditions. Okay? I don't want the health to go negative. I want the game to do something else when the health gets to 0. So over here, I'm going to right-click on action 8, or I can just click on number 8 and press C. That's going to add another condition on line 8. And this condition is going to be for the player. And I'm going to ask it to compare instance variable and say that as long as HP is not equal to 0, this will still happen. I could say as long as the HP is greater than 0. I'm just going to say as long as it's not equal to 0. But in the future, I may have like a boss enemy that can hit me for 2 health. So I could go from 1 health to negative 1 health, and I would keep getting detracted. So a better way of doing this is not saying not equal to 0, but saying as long as it's greater than 0. As long as the HP is greater than 0, take away 1 from the health. When we run it now, close this because we're not using it. When we run it now, oh, I got it already at the start. I got a score of 1, so score is going up by 1. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. And now the enemies don't get destroyed when they hit me, but they do get destroyed when the bullet still fires. My health is down, my score should stop going up. So here's where we're going to create our is alive condition. We're going to ask the system for an event. We're going to say player, and it's going to be again compare instance variable if HP is equal to 0, and then this could again get us in trouble if we have an enemy that hits us for more than 1 hit point. It could go less than. So we'll say if it's less than 1, because that way it'll cover 0, -1, and beyond. We want to add an action to the system to set value of the variable is alive to 0. So by adding that is alive equal to 0, we can do some other things on there. So is alive starts off as 1. When the enemy is overlapping the player's health gets subtracted. If the player's health is less than 1, the system sets is alive to 0. So now we can have the system compare a variable for is alive. If it gets set equal to 0, we can start adding in some actions. We can say for the HUD, set opacity back to 100%. Bring the HUD up. So we'll see the background, the buttons there. We also need to bring the game over message opacity up as well. Set opacity to 100. So if the health goes too low, is alive is going to toggle, and then the text message will come up. Now, on the other conditions, there are some things that we want to stop happening when is alive is 0. We don't want enemies to continue to spawn. We don't want the score to continue to go up. We don't want other things to happen. So in this logic, we're going to go back up here and we're going to say, all right, we need to add some new conditions inside our spawning events. So I'm going to highlight the whole thing by clicking here. And I'm going to say C. So this is adding a condition. The condition is going to be on the system, and the system is going to check that is alive is still equal to 1. Is alive is equal to 1, that means we play the game. So now this number 5 condition is different from number 6, because it'll say is alive is equal to 1, then you can continue to spawn enemies. So when is alive becomes 0, it will not spawn enemies from the odd location points anymore. Okay? I'm going to add that same condition. Now here I can just copy. So I'm going to go Control-C, select number 6, Control-V. It'll paste that condition in there. So now I have 2 conditions that have to be satisfied in order for these spawns to happen. In here, now I want to do some variety in the enemies before we go on to like going back to the home screen, making things like that, because we've done the home screen stuff before. So on the enemy, I want to change the way our enemy spawns. And I'm going to do that by adding some instance variables. We'll give the enemy an HP variable that's 1 to start. We'll give a variable called sign movement that's 0 to start. And we'll give a variable, spawn location. That's 0 to start. So those are the variables that we added. Did we add one more? No, that was it. All right. So health, I'm just going to let sit for now. That's an enhancement we can think about later, because maybe we'll make like a boss enemy that comes out that has 5 health, that has to be hit 5 times. But now instead of destroying every time the projectile hits the enemy, we have to subtract the enemy's health when it gets hit by the projectile and have the system check if the enemy's health is 0, destroy it. So that would be the logic there. Sign movement, that's the first thing that we're going to do. So the next action that we need on here is going to be enemy on created. So on created, we're going to ask the enemy to set value of, and we'll pick sign movement to random, we want floor. So floor is going to round down. Random is going to give us a random number between 0 and 2. So if it's 1.99, it'll round down to 1. If it's 0.5, it'll round down to 0. So this is a random selector. 50% of the time give me a 1, 50% of the time give me a 0. So on created, we can add this thing. So random sign movement is going to be adjusted. Now, this is the first time I think we've ever done a sub-condition. So not only we've had co-conditions, conditions that have to happen together, we can have conditions that only happen after something else happens. So on enemy created, I'm going to right click and I'm going to not add another condition, but I'm going to add a sub event. So right click and add sub event. You can press S on the keyboard with it selected, and it's going to bring up the add event menu, but the event menu is going to be in a specific location, which we'll see at the end. So what we'll do here is we'll say enemy compare instance variable. The instance variable we're comparing is sign movement. If it's equal to 0, we're going to ask the enemy to set its sign movement to horizontal, which is what it is by default. Notice now how there's like a little branch, and I can close this, and this shows that it's a condition that only happens on the enemy being created. It's not happening every run through the code. It's not happening every tick. I can duplicate this, Control C, Control V, and now I have another sub event. This one's going to cover the condition when sign movement is randomly equal to 1 by the random assignment when it's created. And instead of setting the enemy horizontal, what are we going to do? Vertical. I don't know specifically what size, width, height, angle, opacity, value only, forward, backwards does. But now, what we'll see is on created, some of the enemies are going to wiggle left and right. Some of the enemies are going to wiggle up and down. So let's come back here, and we're waiting. All right, so I also should just stop firing and just looking at the enemies. So now some of the enemies are wiggling up and down. Some of the enemies are wiggling. Oh, game over is working. Score is still going up. So it was set sign movement, and then it gives you a selection once you pick it to horizontal or vertical. And I just said 0 is horizontal and 1 is vertical. 80. So on action, it's on the enemy. It's on the enemy, and we go down into the side movement area, and it's called set movement. Okay? So now we're going to do a little bit of tweaking inside here. So enemy on created, we're going to, let's see, on created, we're going to ask the enemy to set value. This time we're going to set the spawn location. And we're going to do floor, which rounds down, random, which gives us a random number from 0 to 8. I'm picking 8 because 0 to 7 are our spawn locations. This one's going to be a little bit longer of a condition. Okay, so it's going to make a bunch of run-on conditions in here. I may show you how to make a group in here to kind of keep things going. Floor random 1 to 8, or 0 to 8. So this will give me a number 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So now the enemy is being created, and I might add a, let's see, can I add a group below, or does it make this, yeah, that doesn't, yeah, we can do it over here. So I'm making a group here for spawn location, because this is going to be a lot of the same code over and over. So to add a group, just a little label. This is just a label saying that this code is going to be here for the spawn location. I went up here, I right-clicked, and I chose Add Group, G on the keyboard, and I gave it a name, Spawn Location.
How do you highlight all of it?
So highlight all of it is because I selected 12. 12 contains 13 and 14. If I just select 12, it'll just select 12. If I just select 13, it'll just select 13. So I'm going to move spawn location down into here so it's a subset of number 11, but not a subset of number 13. And inside here, I'm going to add a sub-event to the enemy, and I'm going to ask it to compare instance variable, and this time we're comparing spawn location, and we're going to see if it's equal to 0. If it's equal to 0, I want that enemy to move to, and it's going to be moved to object.
Do we do set position?
Move to object's a little bit easier because we already laid out where the spawn location objects are. But yes, you could do set positions and give it an XY location. I'd rather just move to an object and then pick spawn location 0. Because it's going to be quicker than figuring out where are all those locations that it needs to be. So if it's given a random 0, move to spawn location 0. Now I can say copy for this one, Control C, and then 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or actually 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I might have an extra one in there.
No.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there's 8s. So on this one here, I've got to edit because I now have 8 copies of this spawn location 0 being set to where it needs to go. I want to change it to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So leave the first one as 0. This one is if it's 1. 2. So I'm just double clicking and updating the numbers inside here. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now inside here, I've got to replace the object here. So I'm going to right click and choose replace object. I'm going to replace spawn location 0 with spawn location 1. Right click, replace object.
No, how to do like the first?
The first part?
Yeah.
So I want to change this. I just double click to open it up. Because I only want to change the value, which was 0, I'm just typing it in here. Oh, how did you make it for the first time?
Yeah.
All right, so I'll make another one here. So if I go add a new sub-event here, the event is enemy, and it's compare instance variable, and the instance variable we're looking at is the spawn location.
Yeah.
And I just started off with equal to 0. So that spawn location is equal to 0. The action we're adding is on the enemy itself, and the action we're adding is move to object. And then I'm just picking the 0 spawn location, and then I'm going to change it from there. Okay. So then I changed all of these to 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Spawn location 1. Replace object. This is going to be 2. Replace object. This is going to be 3.
Won't it stay at that position?
No, it's moving to that location when it's created, but it's been given instruction that every tick it should rotate towards the player and move 1 pixel forward towards the player. Okay? Now I lost track of where I was, but that's okay. That's a good question. So now I'm on 4. 4. Actually, I think I could just double click and then change this to 5. I have to right click and replace object. 6. And 7. So now the control and scroll wheel up because you probably zoomed out. You're probably scrolling down while you're letting go of control from copy and paste, probably. All right. But now look at this huge, ugly piece of code. Like, there are 7, 8 lines of code that tell us the exact same thing. That's why I gave it a group. Because now, once I show one of these working, I can minimize that, and I know that this is done. I don't have to worry about it anymore, and I can keep going in the code here. Same thing with the enemy. This I could put in a larger group to talk about like enemy code and enemy logic. So now let me just see if we're getting things more randomly around. So it should be spawning 4 enemies every time the spawn thing fires, but they're going to be coming from different directions.
Wait, how do I change it to
WASD will do next. Up, health 0. So I made it to 21 points. We didn't stop the score yet. So let's come back up here on this every tick. And I'm going to add a condition. Well, from number 5, I'm going to control C and copy this is alive equals 0. And I'm going to add it to every tick. So every tick is only going to happen if is alive equals 0. So I'm going to run this again and try and die. So my health points go down. There's 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, so now my score isn't going up. My enemy, my thing is still firing, and my enemies are still moving back and forth. So are there more enemies spawning? No, there aren't more enemies spawning. This is the game over screen. I want the projectiles to not fire. So I'm going to add that same condition in the player fire rate. So I'm just going to control V to paste. So now it'll only fire when is alive is equal to 1. That was in line 3. That was every player fire rate seconds. And then it was system is alive equals 1. So that way it won't fire after the game over screen fires. The last thing that I want to happen is maybe we want the enemies to stop moving. So on that is alive is equal to 0, I can add another action to the enemy, and it will do it for all enemies. And I want to go set, the set is in sign, set active is what it's called. And I'm going to set sign to inactive. So the next time this happens, the enemies won't move. That's going to create a problem on restart, though, and I'm going to go get hit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now the enemies are kind of frozen there.
Can you just make it so that enemies get destroyed?
Yeah, we could make the enemies destroyed. I think what's really cool is a lot of times when games like will have like the certain enemies like start just like popping after like a couple seconds, and then like all spiral around and go away. Sam, what you got?
I have an issue.
What's the issue?
They're bouncing between the spawn locations.
I also have that issue.
They're bouncing between the spawn
I
locations?
think it's because of the sign thing.
I don't know, but they're like really
That doesn't matter
scary.
to me.
Yeah.
They're like moving in between them, like back and forth.
Oh, that is a crazy game over thing that's going to happen there. I think I know what you did. Can I fix it after I stop the live stream?
Yes.
Okay, because I want to do the last part today because I don't want to stream for like the whole 47 minutes or however long this is going to be. I want to do the WASD keys now, okay? Because that's going to make testing a little bit easier. So we'll go to layout. On the layout, we're going to add the keyboard as an input. Okay. Now I'm going to go to the bottom of my event sheet, and I'm going to add an event for the keyboard, and it's going to be not on key press, but on key is down. Because this one we want to do when we're holding down, it's going to simulate something. So this one will go on key is down. What we're going to do for the key is W. And when W is pressed down, we're going to add an action to the player, and it's going to 8-direction controls simulate control, and the control we're going to simulate is up. Can you see where I'm going to go with this? I'm going to go Control C with the whole thing highlighted, paste it 3 more times, change this key to WA, change this one to simulate pressing left, change this one to key S,
Hey, Jason.
change this one to simulate going down,
Jason, would you like to do something?
and change this one to D,
Jason, wait, no, it's not easy.
and this one's going to simulate pressing right.
Jason, I'm gonna swear.
So now I've got these keyboard controls that I can run, and now testing should be a lot easier, a lot more fluid, because it's running like a game that you are practiced with playing. I feel more in control now because my left hand is controlling the movement keys, my right hand is controlling the aim, and you can see I'm actually doing pretty good. I'm going to stop playing though. All right. So how can I make this code better? Well, one, I'm going to add another group. So I can right click and add a group, and this is going to be WASD keys. And I'm going to throw each one of these inside here. So I'm just clicking and dragging them there. And then again, same thing, because I don't want to see WASD all the time on my event sheet. I know that those are done, and those 4 lines of code are just for controlling the WASD movements. For this is where I'm going to stop the live stream. We still have to do a little bit more tomorrow with like how does the game over button work, how does the reset button work, what is your home screen going to be, what are we going to call this game? But we'll get to that when we get to that. So hopefully back on YouTube, I'm going to say end stream. Yes.